Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Dora. I'm the Research and Data Director at BBF, and I'll be your main contact for the Vermont Early Childhood Fund grants. BBF is really excited about this opportunity to directly invest $100,000 in regionally focused creative solutions to improve child, family, and community well-being. Today's information session will provide an overview of the VECF, Vermont Early Childhood Fund grants, review selected FAQs and grant logistics, and then open up to your questions. We want to make sure that this time is useful for you, and we'll spend most of the hour as a working session to go over your questions. In recognition that our time is valuable and stretched, I want to remind you that we are recording this session and it is not required to be an applicant or considered as part of the application review. All of the information is available on our website, buildingbrightfutures.org. And if you can't find the answer to your question, you can reach out to me at dlevinson@buildingbrightfutures.org. And that is on the website, so you don't have to write it down. Now I'm going to pass it over to our Executive Director, Morgan Crestman.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Morgan Crestman, and as Dora mentioned, I am the Executive Director at Building Bright Futures. And I'm really thrilled to be here today alongside our regional leaders on behalf of the Building Bright Futures team to talk about this new initiative, the Vermont Early Childhood Fund. And to give you a little bit of background about where this program originated, over the last year, Building Bright Futures was approached by an incredibly generous donor interested in supporting Vermont's early childhood system. And it was really clear that they wanted to prioritize funding towards the needs of communities and were recognizing our 12 regional councils as the early childhood experts within those communities with the on-the-ground knowledge and expertise to identify the needs of kids and families. And this funder was really looking and specifically looking to disrupt traditional power structures that exist in how we fund a lot of our initiatives across states, but also in philanthropic giving. And so they were really looking for both current, but also non-traditional partners with that on-the-ground experience to be able to drive decision-making in how we fund and how we identify the needs of children in the prenatal through age 8 period. So Building Bright Futures team came together and we developed a grant process with the intent of having a very clear, simple process for the application and designing a process that can come with support from our staff for any assistance that folks might need throughout the course of the process. So as you're navigating this grant cycle, please don't hesitate to reach out to Dora or any one of the regional managers that you'll virtually meet this morning if you have questions. So again, we're really excited to have you attend today. We're thrilled about this opportunity and are looking forward to working with you. So now I'm going to transition it to our team of regional managers.
There, I'm unmuted. Hi, everyone. I'm Darla Senecal, Regional Manager for Addison, Bennington, and Rutland counties. We recognize many organizations, including our own, do business in a way that was designed and reinforced by white people. There are inequities built into these structures, and changing them to be anti-racist takes intention. Building Bright Futures staff as an organization is doing our own work to examine and deconstruct these structures to promote social justice and ask grantees to do the same. Here are some questions to consider when designing a program. What assumptions are we making? Are we the right people to be doing this work? Are there barriers to the services or projects we're offering, designing, or proposing? How does the proposed action expand opportunities for racial equity and social justice? Are there any potential unintended consequences for specific groups or populations? Did everyone present contribute to the conversation? And whom else should we include?
So I get to do the next part, which is about the application process. I'm Ellen, and I am the regional manager in Central Vermont, Northern Windsor and Orange, Springfield area, and Southeast Vermont. Just a reminder, Dora, who you met earlier, she's going to be the main contact unless you know us or are in one of our regions. Her email is on the website. Also, all this information is on the website. And I also put her email in the chat. So here we go about the application process. Initial applications are due November 1st. There'll be a blind scoring, which means that the committee will be scoring each other without knowing the organization that is applying. Also, just to note, the regional managers won't be scoring applications from their own regions to make sure it's even more blind, because we could probably have a sense of who's applying from the region. In a minute, we'll look through the criteria, the review criteria, but the full application, which is due in December 6th, so you'll be asked to submit a full application once the first application is reviewed. And that will include a template for a budget, a work plan, and then once grants are awarded, the projects will need to submit 2 short reports, engage with the regional council, either by attending meetings or working on a council project, and meet monthly with a BBF team member for a check-in, just to make sure that you have everything you need to be successful. Another really awesome thing about this is projects will receive 50% of their funding January 1st, 2022 at the start of the grant, and then the remaining 50% May 30th after the first report is submitted. Hopefully that will allow for a little flexibility you need for startup costs rather than having even funding throughout the grant period, which is a year. Ali, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Thank you. Yes, this is Ali Jang, Regional Manager for Chittenden, Franklin, and Grand Isle. This table is specifically about how our team will be looking at each initial application. So the table is also the FAQ section on the website. When we are looking at the applications, the names and region of each project will be removed. At the regional manager for the region will not be reviewing that project. So we want to make sure that this review is as objective as possible. We are seeking projects otherwise not eligible for other funding opportunities, such as some of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, following through the communities, and for childcare businesses stabilization. We are currently working on an overview of funding opportunities in Vermont for early childhood projects and programs, and we will be sharing that information in the near future. Thank you. And I think, Linda, your turn.
Thank you, Ali. This is Linda McNowitz, the Regional Coordinator for Orleans, Essex, Caledonia, and the Moyle counties. One of the great things about the VECF grant is that the funds are meant to be very flexible. They can be used in a lot of different ways to support the priorities of the project region, including salaries, materials, publicity, and food. There are a few things that the funds cannot be used for, including paying off debt, contributing to a capital campaign, and paying for things that happen outside of the grant period from January 1st to December 31st, 2022. We have gotten some questions about overhead costs. If a project is not operating out of an existing organization or needs new space or equipment, those costs can be covered. This grant is not meant to be a primary source of funding for operating expenses. If you want to talk about your specific project and the amount of the grant that would go to these costs, please reach out to Dora.
So that is our overview. And now the rest of this time is really for your questions. I know that we've gotten a few, but hopefully some of them have been answered in these last 10 or so minutes. Feel free to use the chat to raise your hand, or if you're on a call, just feel free to jump in.
I guess I have a question. Let me turn my video on real quick. Hi, I'm Katie. I work at Creative Discoveries in Essex, Vermont. And I was just kind of coming into this not really knowing what the grant was at all. I've heard about it, but didn't really understand what it was for. So is this something that we can use to purchase belongings for spaces to, like, for instance, if I need new cribs that are emergency evacuation cribs, is it something that we could use to, I guess, just get supplies for like COVID stuff, that sort of thing? Or like, what is it specifically that this grant can be used for? Because I know that you said that it obviously can't be used for covering debt or anything like that. But like, just a quick review of what you can use it for.
Sure. So just to start with, there are a bunch of different grants that are coming out at the moment, from ARPA dollars, from this is also a grant cycle application process time. There is funding that is expected, information that's expected to come out of the Child Development Division about their a grant for from their ARPA funds, and I don't have a lot of information about the use for those funds going specifically to childcare, early childhood education programs. I don't know if that's at all. I think that there's a little bit of confusion for some people about that. These funds are really hugely flexible, and again, can be used for supplies, can be used for the cribs that you were talking about. If that is going to improve, that the overall goal is to improve child, family, and community well-being, and align with our regional priorities, which were on that map. And we can go back to that if that's helpful. Does that answer your question, Katie?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. We're also getting a question about public pre-Ks being eligible. And again, absolutely, one of the things, just to go back to our sort of scoring criteria, is that we are hoping to fund things that aren't funded through other existing funding sources. So if there's a better fit, then this project might not be selected, and that doesn't mean that we can talk about if there's a reason that it might not be funded through an existing source, or if there are additional funds that might be needed to really make a project as successful as it could be. And for the BBF team, if I'm missing things, please feel free to jump in. It looks like
there's a question if we're looking to evenly distribute funds in each region. Do you want to speak to that?
Absolutely. So we are funding up to 7 projects. So we have 12 regions, and so it's not going to be split evenly across regions. And this is something that has it was a hard decision. And I think that we want to make sure that, again, sorry, I'm not being very clear. There are funds that will be going to each of the regional councils, and those funds will be distributed evenly. And these projects are really, they're meant to be working on the regional priorities, but they aren't necessarily, they are larger than the council itself. And so no, the answer is that we will not be necessarily having them across all of the regions.
I see a hand up. Oh, did you want to jump in, Morgan?
I just wanted to describe one more piece to that question, which is this is the first year of funding for this grant program. It's really a pilot to really see what we can do and how we can support some really creative regional solutions to some challenging issues that we haven't been able to solve yet, and to really be filling gaps in what other pots of money and federal and state dollars are not promoting. So for this year, that 7 grant target was our first pass at being able to do this well. And in this next round, we hope that we're building capacity and building this funding source so that we can have an even broader reach and build this program over time.
Thanks, Morgan. Adrian, I had seen your hand up, and Melissa, I see your hand up as well. Go ahead, Adrian.
Yes, actually, it's Ed Helm. Hi, Adrian's
Hi,
my
Ed.
better,
Yeah.
my better half here. But I think Morgan might have just answered my question, that it's all new, because I was curious whether applicants are able to see any sort of previous successes or grants that were made for particular purposes, and look at those grants, so that either helps us understand these cycles better, or discourages us from saying, well, this really isn't for us. But I take it because this is brand new, there isn't that kind of database where we're out there.
That's such a great question, Ed. And yeah, so to answer your question, this is the very first year of the Vermont Early Childhood Fund. And we are thrilled to have this opportunity to say to our regional partners and folks who are on the ground, what are the needs of kids and families in your world right now? Are there other funding sources that can support that effort? We're going to try and compile those. If those aren't a good match, we really want to support those needs. And you tell us what those are, put together proposals, and we'll try to support you in designing strong proposals, in thinking critically about how to fill that need and where there are opportunities for collaboration. So we're really excited to build this first year's cohort of this project and then have that database over time so that we're really able to dive in and support the work.
Okay, thank you. You're going to hear from me in Greater Barton Arts as I speak with and for them about early childhood education, the critical first 5 years of life, and the wonderful and proven Dolly Parton Imagination Library program, which is in a few places in southern Vermont, but just started in Glover, Vermont about 3 or 4 months ago. It's finally in the kingdom. Barton Village Library has started it, and Greater Barton Arts wants to see this expanded, because this is truly life-changing for many children that are in homes that don't have books, and it's tailored, for them, and works, because Dolly's been doing this for close to 30 years now.
Thank you, Ed.
That was a
Melissa,
public
you
announcement.
Yeah, we got that. It's a good one. Melissa, you have a question?
Well, yeah, I have children here, so I apologize that the camera's not on. But last night we had a meeting just for the Caledonia area with the politicians and the senators and, all the good people. So there are a lot of grants being thrown out, and last night the conversation was that there are grants coming and funding coming, and they wanted to know where it was directed. A lot of the conversation directed towards well, I actually pushed it, and with the senator who was lucky enough to be the person speaking in my group, that the childcare, but it's not so much the centers, but the home, because I do have children in my home. I have 3 stars. I'm a licensed special needs childcare provider. So I guess it's kind of a little complicated when I'm new at this and not really knowing how to fill out what grants qualify. I do know that because of the date and the deadline and the whole COVID thing, a lot of childcares that opened up did not meet qualifications. But you said this whole grant was the anti-race and the family and all this stuff. Is it possible to use the funding for a proposal that I have a lot of families that are working single parents, that they don't have reliable transportation, and I have to make arrangements to try to get the children here so they're safe. I do have one child here that's been here all week. And to be honest, I don't believe she's been bathed or changed because she's in the same clothes. So I clean her up and wash her clothes. Could we use the funding to make sure that the families have proper clothing for the child?
Well, thank you for sharing that and sharing that with the senators and the community conversation. I think that, again, these funds are really flexible, and maybe we can talk a little bit more directly about what that might look like, and if there are other funds, or if this is the right funding source. Absolutely, let's connect. But yes, I mean, these are really flexible funds, and we want to be able to meet the needs of your communities and these kids and families.
Melissa, one of the things that's really important about what you said is what the needs are of providers, but what the needs are of families, right? So a lot of our regional councils have a priority that speaks to equitable access or supporting the basic needs of kids and families and what that means. And I think that what you just described is a key example of how you could support the needs of kids and families in a really, truly meaningful way to promote access to a range of different supports and services, clothing, food, meeting families' basic needs. So thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yes. And it's, I pushed very hard last night about making sure, because one of the whole thing was the positives that for the community, and it wasn't just, it was as whole as the Northeast Kingdom, but public transportation was a big problem, and that was addressed in both sides. And a lot of these families need childcare, but they don't have reliable transportation. So I go out of my way to make sure that the children are picked up and the parents can get to their job, which it's a hassle sometimes, but I do it because, the child that I picked up this morning, I loaded up the other children. We went, and, the dad was like, oh, she only ate a banana. And I'm like looking, and it's like 11:15 in the morning. And what do you mean she only ate a banana? So we're eating lunch early. So.
Absolutely. These are such tough situations. And again, thinking again about how we are using all of our resources together, and connecting with other people at the regional council, connecting with your legislators. So thank you for, again, bringing that up and into this conversation. I do want to just answer a couple of the questions that are in the chat. There was a question about up to 7 projects for a total of 100,000. So the projects budgets that we're looking for are between 10,000 and 20,000. So because we want there to be a significant project to be able to make an impact. So it could just be 5 programs, it could be 7. It's not 14 across the board, and we're looking for budgets that are appropriate for the project. So that is one of the scoring criteria is does the budget fit the project. There was a question about collective impact. Is there a collective impact consideration or measurement in the scoring? And I might need a little bit of clarification about what the question means.
I guess I was just thinking in other grants, they want to know what the impact, then they want to see the dollar go the farthest. So, and considering it's not a humongous grant, I was thinking it may be more appropriate to supplement or expand a program that's established, because on that grant amount, you can't really do a full-blown project that targets like an entire region. That was the question. That's all.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of these people here are trying to figure out like how does this work into their model? You know what I mean? Does it fit into your model? So if you're looking at that somewhere around 14,000 being your entire budget, or if that's going to fit into something you're already doing, I guess that's what.
Absolutely. So just to say that the projects aren't necessarily meant to cover a whole region, right? It could be a very, very small pilot. It can definitely be continuing, maintaining existing projects, scaling something. Again, flexible funds. We really want to be investing in things that are meaningful to the region, rather than saying this is exactly what we should be doing, and here's how we want you to do it. We want there to be an impact for sure, and that's what some of these reports are, but we don't want it to be hugely burdensome. If you're invited for a full application, we will help with a work plan, and that will include some of like figuring out what the project is gonna look like in more detail, so that we can all be sure that we're that we are leveraging resources, that we are partnering throughout the community, that that we are sort of using these these dollars as effectively as possible. And it's totally possible, just like Morgan was saying, this is the first year, and that there are pilots that end up not being successful, but they still need to be funded to be able to know if they're successful or not. So it's not a reason to not try. So there's a lot of flexibility, and we don't want to tell you how to use the funds.
Nicole, I saw your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Hi, thanks. You've mentioned a lot about flexibility. So I think the answer to my first question is, can the project expand over multiple regions, like blur those boundaries of regions? I'm guessing that with all this flexibility, that would be something that would be tolerated, is expanding across different counties. Is that correct?
Yep. I think we're looking for a primary region, but definitely realize that there are things that will work well throughout multiple regions and counties. So benefit is flexibility.
Okay.
That's totally possible, and a primary region fitting in with that region's priorities.
Great. I mean, the project that I run is in Bennington County now, and the thought would be possibly scaling outside of our current geographic footprint. But so a second question I had was, if we scale and, you know, we'll be looking for these funds to grow our existing program, my concern is sustaining the program year after year in the future. And what is there an opportunity for will this fund and opportunity be ongoing? And, you know, not asking for it to be guaranteed over any certain amount of time, but would there be the opportunity to apply to this year after year?
That's a great question, Nicole. So at this point, this is a 1-year program that we are using as a pilot to demonstrate the expertise of our regions and the fact that you all are the people that are on the ground understanding the needs of kids and families, and that you should be driving decision-making around how funding supports kids and families, providers, and educators. We do believe that this will be a multi-year award, but right now we don't have that funding committed. So at this point, we're operating the pilot year. We at BBF will be submitting reports to this incredible funder who is really excited about this work and would like to see it grow into an even bigger program, where we've already received questions about how other private philanthropic donors can add to this fund and build for the next cycle. So we definitely anticipate it growing over time. But at this point right now, it's not a question that I can answer about a specific project being able to receive multiple rounds of funding.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. It's great to see so many familiar and new faces. We're excited about this opportunity and love the energy that we're hearing. So we encourage you to ask questions, to get in touch with your regional manager if you're already connected to a regional council, and certainly send your questions our way. We really hope this is an accessible opportunity to solve or to address issues that otherwise might not have a funding opportunity or might need to end because there's not funding. And we would love to hear from you.
Just a quick thought. Third grade reading scores are an important metric in throughout the state with these different regions. And I want everybody to be sensitive to my wife Adrian's background as treasurer of the Florida Reading Association, reading teachers around the state of Florida. And in the capacity as treasurer, she learned that the prison system in Florida uses third grade reading scores to decide how many prisons and prison beds they're going to need in 12 to 14 years.
It's a really interesting indicator, and it's actually one that we track. We do track in Vermont as well with our Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan. So Ed, thank you for pointing that out and for the work that both of you have done. It's really impressive. At this point, I think I'm gonna, if you want to hold your comment, we would love to hear more. I'm just going to thank folks. We're going to stop the recording, and if folks would like to stay on to answer questions, we're welcome to do that.